Welcome to episode 41 of the Princeton Podcast, produced by the podcast production team at HG Media, providing audio and video production services here in Princeton since 1999. In this episode, our Princeton Podcast host, Mayor Mark Freda, welcomed Julia Wall, head of school at Stuart Country Day School of the Sacred Heart, a leading preschool to grade 12 private school here in Princeton designed just for girls. In addition to discussing Stuart's mission to educate young women to a life of leadership and service, Julia described how Stuart is uniquely positioned to provide an environment where girls shine, where they are willing and able to take risks and explore opportunities. Through Stuart's highly personalized and academically rigorous curriculum, with nurturing and expert faculty who know girls well, Julia described why Stuart girls graduate as compassionate and empowered global citizens who are driven to be forces of change in our world. I enjoyed meeting Julia Wall, as well as learning more about Stuart Country Day School's history here in Princeton, its academic philosophy, and many of its traditional activities. So without any further introduction, let's join our host, Mark Freda, and his guest, Julia Wall, for episode 41 of the Princeton Podcast.
Julia, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's our pleasure, really. Hey, so tell us a little bit about Stuart Country Day School.
So Stuart Country Day School of the Sacred Heart is right here in the heart of Princeton. It's an all-girls independent Catholic day school. We serve students grades K to 12 in our all-girls program, and then we have a co-ed preschool as well. Its mission really is to prepare young women for lives of exceptional leadership.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. What is your background experience? So, tell us about what prepared you to be at Stuart.
Yeah, so I just finished my first year, and I believe it was a successful year. My goal really was to get to know all parts of the community and all of its stakeholders, and I am so lucky that it is already a hugely connected school community, and it's small enough to really get to know all the families over a short period of time. And so prior to me being the head of school here, I was at a school called Kent Place School, and I was the assistant head of school there, and I was there for about 11 years. It's also an all-girls K to 12 school, a very similar mission in terms of its leadership development. And prior to that, I was at another all-girls school in the Bronx called Preston High School. It was a K to 12 Catholic school, and that's where I started my teaching career as an English teacher.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you're so you definitely have the background and definitely have the experience. Mm-hmm. So, why an all-girls school?
I have always wanted to lift up all-girls environments my entire educational career. As I had mentioned, I started as a teacher in an all-girls setting. I did not go to an all-girls school myself. I actually came into that school environment with all of the myths that I believe a lot of people who have not experienced an all-girls setting might have. And I was completely blown away by a very different environment that an all-girls setting can provide. I felt like the students really championed each other in a very unique way that I don't remember experiencing in middle and high school. I thought that the level of meaningful relationships that they were able to cultivate with each other because they were truly themselves was so powerful, not just in the academic setting, but also in their social lives. And so I just felt like students moved more freely in that type of environment, got closer to who they really were, and then therefore they stretched themselves in really expansive ways. They took really healthy risks in their learning and in their leadership development. And so from that first teaching experience, it has really been my motivating driver as an educator to continue to empower all-girls schools. And so when I was seeking my first headship and when the opportunity to lead Stuart, who is in the regional and national community, a real leader in girls' education, I jumped at it. I just thought, what a gift this could be, and how there was so much mission alignment for me.
So that's great that it all lined up. So what do you think a typical graduate from Stuart might say if you were to, ask them to come back and talk to girls now at the school?
Yeah.
Any idea what?
I mean, I have some idea because I spent the better part of a year doing that.
Yeah.
And I traveled across the country getting to know as many alums as I could. I'm still on that journey. There are 3,000 of them, so I certainly don't know all of them for sure. But what I hear over and over is three things. One is that they felt hugely confident in their ability to express their voice in myriad climates and in myriad ways. So when they left to go to college, they didn't hesitate to raise their hand when they saw their peers maybe hesitating. They took on leadership roles in college that they didn't see their peers taking on. So there was a confidence that came from probably daily practice of expression that they took with them to college and beyond. I think the other thing that they express is a high level of competence, that they felt very prepared academically to be in all spaces. And they spoke especially about their competency in STEM fields when oftentimes they were a minority in the classroom and felt like they had the skills in place to navigate in sort of a male-dominated classroom environment. So I think confidence and competence to move in all spaces. And then the last thing that I picked up, which I think is really unique to Stuart, is this thread of compassion and service. That 201, and really from kids that maybe just graduated all the way up to 90-year-old, about 80-year-old alums that I met, there's a thread in their life that remains of feeling impelled to action, that in their awareness of what the world needs, that they feel compelled to contribute to its solution. And so they are in some way or fashion, whether it's through their work life or whether it's through their home life or their service to community, they all seem to express that desire, and that it's almost from a gut that says, this is part of my purpose and I need to contribute. And so that, for me, those are the common themes that I hear from alums.
That's pretty impressive. That's very nice. I mean, you want people to come out and be involved in the world around them.
Yeah.
And so you're obviously preparing them to do that very well.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes schools really limit their definition of success to maybe where students land or what jobs they have. And to me, the work of schools is how to raise a 40-year-old. And when you get to a certain age in your life, you realize that you are a full person that needs to be nurtured and honored and embraced and grown in all those ways. And that if we really measure school success by these very linear pathways, we miss out on the humanity of school and on humans themselves. So, yeah.
Wow. That's great. Thank you. So I read that Stuart actually belongs to a network of schools. Can you explain, what that is and how that works?
Yeah, so we are a Sacred Heart school. And so what that means is that there are about 25 schools across the country and in Canada and Mexico, part of one conglomerate of schools that shares a mission, shares a purpose, and then also shares programming. And so we're in this terrific area of being an independent school where we get to craft the curriculum and the pedagogy that's most appropriate for the students that are right in front of us, and we have great freedom to do that. But we're anchored by these terrific goals and criteria for what school should feel like and what its purpose are. And not just very briefly, the 5 goals that it's anchored by is a personal and active faith, that Stuart is a school that by definition is Catholic, but it serves a wide and diverse range of religious and non-religious affiliated families. So we have about a third of our students who identify as Catholic and 2/3 that identify as another religion or without a formal religion. And so we really focus on this idea of a child's inner spirituality and how we grow that inner spirituality as really a compass and an anchor for them. So that's goal 1. Goal 2 is a deep respect for intellectual values, so that there's meaning in life that can be derived when you seek and constantly are seeking and learning and coming to understand and are curious, and that you're fulfilled by that. And so that's not just a goal for school, but that's a goal for life. I talked a little bit about the third goal, that social awareness that impels us to action. The fourth goal is that we are inspired to build community wherever we are. And that means that we're building inclusive communities, and communities where every person in that community belongs, and that we're eradicating systems that might make that difficult. And so it's not a passive participation in community, but it's really an active participation in building community. And then the last one, which for a middle schooler is the favorite, it's a personal growth in an atmosphere of wise freedom. That we feel like when we can trust students with freedoms and we're able to walk alongside them in their academic exploration and then their social and emotional exploration, then they're able to grow and stretch. And so what that looks like in our school and in all Sacred Heart schools is that students enter in with a lot of ownership of decision making. They get to make wise choices, as they say, that are led by an ethical compass and deliberation and reasoning. So that's kind of the Sacred Heart philosophy that, as a school leader entering in new, are a roadmap for how then I operate a school within those criteria. And I think it's a beautiful roadmap for what education should look like.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just loved hearing all that, because I think whether it's an all-girl school or for any school, right, to have those kind of values, and that's how you prepare someone for later life. Wow, I mean, they're going to be well prepared.
Another benefit of that school network is there is a lot of programming that's associated with it. So our middle schoolers go all around the country for a 3-week period of time and exchange with other students from network schools as well. So last year they went to Florida and to San Francisco and to New Orleans and all over. And then in exchange, we have students that are in our community for that same period of time. So that's, I think, a way that they're really seeing an expanded world. And then our upper schoolers do that same program internationally. So they'll go to schools in Mexico and France and Japan and Australia and Ireland. And so again, it's thinking about how do I build empathy around in a world that really needs empathy, and we build empathy by stepping in each other's shoes. So that's a terrific addition to being a member school as well.
Yeah, what great opportunities you provide to the students. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so from what I understand of a Sacred Heart school, social global awareness is a critical part of the overall education. Can you explain, so what does that actually mean?
A global awareness? Well, I think that all schools are really keyed in on this. I mean, this isn't, I would be remiss to say that we do this in isolation. That I think that what good schools know is that we cannot educate students in a vacuum. It is really important that we're introducing context, global context around our academic program, around the students that are in our classroom. It's really important that myriad perspectives are learned about, that are celebrated, and that are embraced. So I think that that's what we mean in terms of building that awareness piece, so that then we know, and our students know, what the work is that we need to do. So that takes shape in our curriculum for sure, and also in our service learning programs, and just in some of our daily practice. We do a lot of local service around our communities as well. Mm-hmm. And service is a funny thing too, because I think that we've stopped using the word service as much as I think that there is and traded it really for the idea of partnership, because our students are gaining so much from the partnerships that have been developed with schools with communities like, for instance, Princeton Nursery, when our students have the gift of going in and reading to the students, and then in kind, maybe the students have some mentoring or some mentorship in our older students. So there's a reciprocity that I think we acknowledge when we're thinking about getting and giving.
Right. So it is a true partnership. It's both. It's going both ways.
I believe that that's what we have to acknowledge.
Yeah, that's a very good way to look at it. I think kind of alluded to this, an important aspect of a Stuart education is personal growth. Can you kind of talk, a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the world is really complex for students right now. It's really noisy right now as well. And they are receiving a lot of competing messages. They're receiving a lot of information in general. And it's important that we as educators are walking alongside them as they decipher what they are going to believe. And so I think that the freedom to explore all the information that's out there is part of our role as an educator, but also to help them decipher the information and what it might be saying and what the hidden messages might be. And I think that allowing that exploration is what we mean by the personal growth. At the end of the day, we're not here to teach them what to believe. We're here to teach them how to decipher and how to deliberate and then determine for themselves what paths they want to go down.
Which is a critical skill. I mean, I really think you really have to learn how to listen. Yeah. And it's important not just to hear people, but actually listen to them and figure out what is it they're actually saying. And I think in the world of, not to go on too much of a tangent, but like in the political world, you really want to be sure that you listen to what politicians have to say with a grain of salt and really translate what they're saying versus what they really mean. Yeah. And I think that's
in all contexts.
In your family life, in anything, you really need to.
I mean, I think that, going back to our initial mission of building leaders and building the capacity to lead. Leadership development is that. It really, a key component is listening and deliberating. And sometimes we confuse what leadership looks like. We think that it's a soapbox and the loudest voice and the one that is able to compel and convince quickly. But really, I think true leadership is really understanding what a community needs and then serving it and not doing it in a way that is pulling attention towards you. But I think that's those are the skills that firstly I think women have been doing for eons. I think that women naturally are community builders. They galvanize groups and then work to lead from within. That has been a skill that I think, and so coming with that is a great level of empathy, a great level of understanding, and knowing that a rising tide lifts all boats is kind of a philosophy, I think, of girls' leadership oftentimes. And so to harness all of those skills that I think women for generations have been using, and then really placing women in spheres of influence over time is an unbelievable legacy that I can get excited about. And I think that, my theory of change is that if women who graduate from schools like Stuart are in spheres of influence over time, then we will get closer to the world that we want. Right. So that's hugely exciting. I don't know if I went off on a tangent.
No, we're good. That was all good. That was tremendous. So I would imagine, like most schools, Stuart must have traditions or some special traditions that are there. Could you elaborate on that?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, we are celebrating our 60th year this year, so it's really an exciting time. And we just finished our school year, which every school usually at the end of the year has its ceremonies and longstanding traditions, and we have these ceremonies called Prize Day at each division, where as a head of school, I get to acknowledge each student at the end of every year. Their name is read. They are handed what's called a prize, but it's really a gift. And in that gift are acknowledgments from their teachers of ways that they have been contributors to our community, and their affirmations. And I think of how special that is to be able to to look at every kid as they're leaving their school year and say, I'm proud of you. I mean, that's not something that every head of school gets to do. And it's because we're small and because these types of traditions and ceremonies exist that I get to do that. And then we had graduation, which was such a beautiful ceremony. And in that graduation, every student there was a paragraph written about every student and how they contributed to our school community. So usually graduations are you say your name, you're on and off the stage in a heartbeat. But some of our students have been with us for 12 years. Some of them have been with us for 2 years.
Yeah.
But they all have made their mark here and they deserve their moment of shining. And so in a school like ours, I think we're able to do that. So there's lots of traditions that are embedded in our community that really acknowledge the single child, and I think that then feels like, wow, this place really knows me. And then we have, one of the favorite traditions is something called Kanje. And what it is that every year students arrive to school and on a random day, school is shut down and everyone gets on a bus and goes to someplace special. So this year they all got on a bus and went to American Dream Mall. Another group went and they went to Six Flags. Another one went to the movies and then roller skating. And the point of that is that our students work incredibly hard, and we need to offer some releases from that.
Yes.
And thinking about health and wellness of girls in particular, where they are, especially for high achieving, highly motivated girls, that they will grind. They will keep that pressure on themselves.
Yeah.
And so as a school community that knows that and knows that they have high sights for themselves, we have to make sure that we are providing some release valves within the school. And so there are many other traditions that are in alignment with that too, but Kanje is the one that everyone remembers. Schools like ours, and especially in the Sacred Heart Network, just are embedded with so many traditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like the one, though, where you're paying attention to the mental well-being of the overall well-being also, not just the mental, but, that release, because there's a lot of pressure on students these days. And,
and we are in a pocket of the nation that it is especially that way.
Yes.
I mean, we are anchored by an elite institution, right?
Yeah.
And we are in a region and a community that really values achievement and education. And I believe that you can have that environment without as much pain.
Yes.
There is ways that you can achieve everything that you want to achieve and also administer the joy that should accompany any hard work. And so teaching girls how to get into their flow so that the work doesn't feel so painful, and then seeing when they really do need some extra support really can only be done if you truly know your students and see, when they are falling off or falling down.
Yeah.
So I think that we do a really good job at that.
Yeah.
It's a crisis in the nation, I think, right now, the health and wellness of students. And I think it's really, this is a critical moment for schools to take the lead in how we build in students the capacity for resilience and then in turn leadership, because we do not want a nation of sick leaders that are going to burn out or don't know how to manage their own health and wellness. That is a key component for success.
Yeah, I have to agree. All right, so where's Stuart going in the future? Plans, goals that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. After year one, you take a lot of data in, and I think that the main job this summer is sifting through that data. And certainly things are bubbling to the top. And we mentioned probably one of my primary goals is how do we integrate our student support services with our academic program much more seamlessly and de-silo some of those things. So we are taking a hard look at time and resources and how we combine those things to make sure that our students' health and well-being is at the center of our primary purpose, because we believe that if that is connected, then math will come, English will come. All of those other things will just be received with better care. So that's a direction that I think you'll start seeing from Stuart in how we talk about Stuart, but also some of our spaces, de-siloing even our personnel. Oftentimes we get into our offices and we say, I'm doing this thing, and then I'm doing this thing, and we don't talk to each other. So really integrating and then teaming together to really offer a better level of care, I think is front of mind. Our academic departments are already doing that. I think that gone are the days that English is separate from history, is separate from art. I mean, I think that we're missing oftentimes the point of how these things are integrated and how these disciplines can better integrate and then make meaning. So our academic program really took the lead on that, and now it's time for our student support services to do the same.
Julia, this has been an eye-opener for me. All that the Stuart provides to the students is just amazing. So thank you very much for having shared all that with us today.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for the 41st episode of the Princeton Podcast, produced by the podcast production team at HG Media, providing audio and video production services here in Princeton since 1999. If you enjoyed this episode of the Princeton Podcast, please share it with your friends. Visit our website at princetonpodcast.com and be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts.